So I don't know about you, but I have just been floored as I go around running errands, constantly sanitizing my hands and, mask on, mask off, how do you wear it comfortably, all of that stuff. And hearing Christmas music in the background that a year ago I would never even have imagined that this could have been a possibility and that this would have been our life. But I think that as I've been reflecting this week on the word peace for Advent, what that means, to have peace in a season where there is so much uncertainty. And one of my reflections actually started from a quote I found a couple months ago from Erwin McManus. And he basically, I'm going to probably butcher it, but said something like, a peace that comes from control is an illusion. True peace comes when we realize we never had control in the first place. And I think that that's really true. Oftentimes I think we have peace because we think that we know what's coming, and to some extent we can control what's around us. And so I think it was David Benner, it might have been Henry Nouwen, but they said something about fear. It was something along the lines of, I spent my life thinking that I wasn't a fearful person, but the truth is I just avoided everything I feared, so I didn't have to face the fact that I was actually afraid. I just avoided everything I feared, so I didn't have to face the fact that I actually was afraid. Now, I was thinking about this as it relates to peace. I wonder if perhaps a lot of us think we have peace because we in reality have control. And when that peace disappears, I wonder if perhaps it is worth asking ourselves, do we actually have peace that has stayed despite the changing situation and circumstances? And if we don't, is it perhaps that we were under the illusion that we had control and therefore had peace? Because you know how it is. Like when you think you know what to expect, there's so many things that in your life that feel secure, finances, job, and even something that sort of is closer to home, your health. You have peace when you know what to expect. But when that uncertainty comes, what's your response? Is it anxiety? Do you lose your peace? And so I think some of it for me has just really been like, what is the question of the season as we look at this week and we think about peace? What does it actually mean to have peace? And was it all just an illusion? I think that for me, I was reminded and reconvicted that my time living in Central America, when you're living in a developing country, pretty much every time you go out the door, you're taking possessions that you're willing to let go of, i.e. usually expect to be robbed, and something happened to things that you own and have. And usually an unexpected adventure. And I think being abroad a lot of the time just means you can't control a lot of the circumstances, and you certainly don't understand a lot of the cultural nuances. And as I watched kind of like COVID happen and realize how much I take for granted as a form of expectation, like just realizing that I think that I can have job security, or I think I can trust my finances, or we have a very kind of like social safety net financially, or even I can trust my health. But with something like COVID, I think the reality is perhaps all of that when we're living in this space, especially North America, is an illusion. So do we really have peace if it's really just a byproduct of our control? And so perhaps I think the first question I would ask you is, if you in this season have struggled to feel like a peaceful person, or to feel, no anxiety, it's perhaps asking yourself, what did I think I have control over? And then asking the Lord, did I really have control over that? Because I think when you reflect on it, we'll realize that we have very precious little control of anything. And as we head and reflect on into Christmas, one of the stories that came to mind in this was young Mary, when this angel appears to her and says something to the effect of, blessed are you. And her first thought is to be troubled. I mean, she has an angelic visitation, and the first is like, do not be afraid. Blessed are you, chosen among women. And Mary's response to that is rightly so being troubled in spirit. But then as the angel kind of outlines like why she is blessed and what's going to happen, she asks very practical questions like, how can this be, right? Like, how is this going to go? And basically the angel outlines it to her like the Holy Spirit's going to come upon you. But like Mary probably really knew what that meant. I mean, she's in her teens, right? But it's her response that actually just was really reconvicting to me. She just said to like, let it be to me as you have said. A teenager who understood that her life was not her own and that she really also had precious control over anything, including her own body, which would now get to house the Son of God in flesh. What a holy calling. But that is a calling that all of us are invited into, is to realize that our life is not our own. And as each of us follows Christ, we too are invited to become the house or the temple in which the Holy Spirit dwells. And so I just want to encourage you as this season, kind of ends as we go into the end of 2020 to maybe spend some time reflecting on the areas in which you have lost peace. And if you have lost peace, is it because maybe you thought you had control or you knew what to expect? And then maybe recommit your life in the same way as Mary to have your body, have yourself be a temple of the Holy Spirit, a house of the Holy Spirit in which the Lord of God can work. And I guarantee you that surrender, even through the path that might be difficult, if you think about Mary's path, likely mocked and probably rendered an outsider because she's pregnant, her and Joseph have not been married. I'm not saying that at times it wasn't easy, but I do think there is a peace that comes from surrender of control rather than the illusion of it. And so how might we surrender our lives in our next year to Jesus?